Hello my friends, in today's video we will take a look at the Nikon ZF. ZF is Nikon's retro full-frame DSLM made for people who appreciate the history of photography and want to enjoy both photography and video, but still want a very solid output. It is not the first attempt at making a vintage style camera, but it might be the most accurate yet. In this video, we will take a look at the performance of the ZF, at the styling and the user experience to find out whether you should go back in time with Nikon. Most striking aspect of the ZF is the retro styling. The base shape is inspired by Nikon's SLRs from late 70s and early 80s. Some of the retro details worth mentioning are the shape of the viewfinder housing with historically accurate Nikon front, the texture on the front side, and silver accents on the buttons on the front side. It also has dedicated exposure dials and shutter on the top of the camera, but we will get to the handling and the controls later. The materials are very convincing. It is very well made, but I can still say that it kind of feels like something made in early 80s. The packaging is actually extremely impressive. Nikon has managed to pack a full-frame sensor with in-body image stabilization into a 14.4 cm wide body without having a battery in the grip. It weighs 630 grams, which is on the heavier side, but that also gives the ZF somewhat more authentic feel. Despite all of the vintage styling, it is fully weather sealed. The ZF has a rotating screen. If you follow this channel, it might be a surprise for you, but I actually approve of that. The reason why I approve is that you can close it and have just nice texture on the backside, which makes it look even more authentic. A big part of the styling and overall vintage feel is the 40mm f2 kit lens, which matches the ZF perfectly, but I will also talk about that later. The ZF uses the usual 24.5 megapixel sensor, but it is paired with Nikon's latest XH2 processor. It is actually more modern than the Z6 II in that regard. Unsurprisingly, it performs like any other 24 megapixel backside illuminated sensor released after 2018. In terms of ISO, that means clean pictures up to ISO 3200, more noise at 6400 but usable, somewhat usable 12800 and 25600 as an emergency option. In terms of dynamic range, it means great flexibility and freedom to reveal detail in shadows and highlights. As long as you can stay at lower ISO values, you can use sliders as much as you want to. It offers quite a lot of room for editing even at higher ISO values up to about ISO 6400, so the dynamic range is great as expected. 24 megapixel resolution is fine, but this is probably the last generation of full-frame hybrid cameras with 24 megapixel sensors, so I hope that we will finally see some innovation in this class in the foreseeable future. ZF is Nikon's first camera with 96 megapixel pixel shift mode. It only works on a tripod and you need to combine the images in the computer, so it is one of the more basic implementations of pixel shift, but it is still a great option to have. ZF definitely takes very nice pictures. By default, the colors are on the cold side, which is fine by me, but they are still pretty accurate out of the camera. JPEGs or HEIFs reveal a lot of dynamic range, which is a good idea in my opinion, and I don't mind this kind of look either. There is also a black and white position on the mode switch, which is an easy way to take very nice contrasty black and white pictures. Even if you use it, you are still getting full color RAWs, of course. The ZF is actually a pretty fast camera. It can shoot 11 frames per second with mechanical shutter if you want RAWs, 14 frames per second if JPEGs are fine by you, and up to 30 frames per second with electronic shutter, but again JPEG only. Those are very solid numbers. The ZF offers two card slots. One for full-size UHS-2 SD cards and one for micro SD cards. That is a very clever solution and I'm surprised that nobody has done that before. Micro SD card won't offer full UHS-2 speed, but it will give you backup option, which is crucial for some users. The ZF uses a hybrid autofocus system with 273 face detection points. It works well in the stills mode. It is fast, accurate, and there is no hunting even in more difficult situations. Basically all of the issues that I've encountered with the Z6 II with early firmware were fixed. Even the tracking is very solid. It offers all of the usual smart subject detection stuff, which works well with humans, animals, and some specific objects. Overall, I am happy with the still's autofocus. The video autofocus also works very well in usual sensible situations. It is smooth and pretty fast with no hunting. It actually worked really well even in my more extreme tests, such as this one with SD card. The autofocus may get a little bit slower when focusing from close distance to infinity, but that is definitely better than hunting. The face tracking works great as well. Video autofocus with a 40mm f2 kit lens was noticeably slower than with 24mm f1.8 though. Despite that, I am happy with the video autofocus. Nikon has surpassed Fujifilm and they are now quite close to Sony and Panasonic. The video capabilities of the ZF are solid but not among the best in class. It shoots very nice 4K video downsampled from 6K up to 30p with no crop. The amount of detail is what you would expect at this point, so it is very detailed. It can shoot 4K in 10-bit 420 in H.265 or 8-bit in H.264. 422 would be nice of course, but I don't think that it will be a major issue with a camera such as this one. The bitrate is also pretty high at 190 megabits per second in 30p. The settings are pretty limited, so you can choose between 8-bit and 10-bit and that's basically it. On the other hand, it can shoot 4K 60p but as expected with a 1.5 times crop. The image quality is still pretty nice, so you won't notice that much of a difference under normal circumstances. Advanced video features such as All Intra, OpenGate 6K or ProRes are not available. ZF isn't really meant to be a workhorse video camera, so that is quite understandable. What is not understandable though is the fact that in video you can only choose ISO manually in fully manual mode. Automatic ISO is mandatory with all other modes, so auto, program, shutter speed priority and aperture priority. What makes that even worse is the fact that if you are shooting video in auto or semi-auto mode, it will use very high shutter speeds even on a bright day for no reason and increase ISO. That makes no sense whatsoever and there is nothing that you can do about that. I will spare no criticism here. This is really annoying and I hope that Nikon will eventually fix it. Overall, it is a solid video camera, but there is a room for improvement. The in-body image stabilization in the ZF is rated for 8 stops, which is the highest rating of all Nikon cameras. These ratings have to be taken with a grain of salt nowadays, but it is definitely a very effective in-body image stabilization. The static shots are a big strength of the ZF stabilization. These are exceptionally stable. I have only tested it up to 40mm, but I was getting great results. Here I have to say again that the battery in the ZF is positioned perpendicular to the sensor, which means that the internal packaging is very tricky, but Nikon has managed to put this kind of in-body image stabilization in the ZF regardless. The handling and the controls on the ZF are very specific. As far as I know, it is the only camera with both dedicated exposure dials and PSAM dial or switch in this case. The way that it works is very simple. PSAM dial has higher priority. That means that if you use P, S, A or auto, it simply ignores corresponding dial or dials. That is a good solution in my opinion. There is almost no grip on the ZF for obvious reasons, so you will be holding it differently than the Z6 for example. This shape and control layout is primarily designed to be historically accurate. If you want something more ergonomic and convenient to use, Nikon will be happy to sell you Z6, 7, 8 or 9. All of the dials have extremely positive feedback and they are very pleasant to use. Even the sound of the dials is very cool. The buttons layout is also fine by me. There is no AF on button, but it is possible to use AEL button for back button focusing, so that is not that big of a deal. There is also no joystick and I have to say that I miss it, but it would probably be out of place on a camera such as the ZF. Overall, I am happy with the controls. They match the styling and the intended purposes of a retro camera such as this one. Nikon's menu system has its own logic. If you are a long-time Nikon user, it will be completely fine for you, so you can skip this part. If you are used to menu system of any other brand, there will be some learning curve. There is the photo setting menu, video menu, and the pencil or custom settings menu. Sometimes it is a bit difficult to guess whether you should look for your desired setting in the shooting menus or custom settings menu. Once you get used to it, it is fine, but I can't really say that I'm a big fan of the Nikon menus. Fortunately, iMenu or function menu can help a lot. The confirmation issue that I've described in my Z6 II review has been fixed, so the iMenu is now very pleasant to use. The display is the best in class. It is a 3.2-inch panel with 2.1 million dot resolution. Those extra 0.02 inches are actually noticeable. The resolution is great and so is the brightness. The display is a joy to use and I am very glad that Nikon did not cheap out on this part of the ZF. As I mentioned, it uses a rotating mechanism which I generally don't like, but in this specific case I like that it provides an option to close the display and use the camera in vintage mode with EVF only. The electronic viewfinder uses a very well-known 3.69 million dot panel. I think that 3.69 million dots is still completely fine for all-round use. The magnification is 0.8 times, which is fine, although I personally would prefer a slightly smaller magnification. ZF uses the usual EN/EL15 batteries. It works with a C model or with legacy B models. The battery life is rated for 380 shots, which is similar to other cameras in category, but not among the best in class. I've mostly been using the ZF with a 40mm f2 kit lens. It matches the styling perfectly. I haven't tested it on my testing scene yet, but it takes very nice real-world pictures. Unfortunately, it is not weather sealed and it has a plastic mount. It's been a while since I saw one of those. I have to say that the ZF loses some of the vintage feel when you use it with other lenses, but that is to be expected. To sum up, Nikon ZF is a retro full-frame DSLM done right. First of all, the styling aspect is very comprehensive. The way it looks, the materials and the controls are very convincing and it makes the ZF one of the most enjoyable and stylish cameras on the market. The output is solid, much like with any other full-frame DSLM with 24-megapixel backside illuminated sensor. It is nothing special though. Probably the biggest highlight for me is the IBIS, or rather the combination of the IBIS effectivity and packaging. The autofocus also works well for both stills and video. Also worth mentioning is the backup micro SD slot and solid continuous shooting speed. The display is excellent and the electronic viewfinder is also completely fine. The video specifications are okay for this kind of camera, but it lacks some advanced features. The whole automatic ISO in video thing is a significant issue for me personally. That is really annoying. The menu system is what it is, but it is not a big deal once you get used to it. Despite those annoyances, I have to say that I have really enjoyed my time with the ZF. It is a retro camera done right, and I wouldn't be surprised if it took off like the X100V. I recommend it. So that's it for this video, thank you for watching, I hope that you liked this video and that you have found it to be useful. Stay tuned for more videos and maybe consider subscribing if you don't want to miss my future content. I appreciate your feedback in form of thumbs up or thumbs down. If you would like to ask anything or share your opinion, please do so in the comment section, and see you next time.